Why did I do a 3-volume commentary on Revelation? Oh, wow. Lots of different reasons. One is everybody's really interested in it. What we'll find out is they're not as interested in my take on it, and we'll see in a minute why. But that's one reason I did it. Number two, I did it, I guess, in the providence of God, because I can't believe that the stuff I'm going to talk about in Revelation and biblical end times talk is now mainstream discourse in the political body politic of America. Can you believe it? I mean, that blows my mind. I grew up, my dad was a pastor of a non-denominational Bible teaching church in Roanoke, Virginia. He went to Dallas Theological Seminary, got a doctorate in theology. He was good friends with Hal Lindsey. My mom didn't like him, thought he was a nerd. And I grew up all these classes on eschatology, on the end times, on the pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib rapture, and the millennium, and all these kind of things. And everybody's talking about it on cable news. Wow. And the reason, in large part, that I'm going to talk about it today is because there was a kind of a seminal interview that Tucker Carlson did with Senator Ted Cruz a couple weeks ago. One of the clips went viral, 14 million views, and it's fascinating stuff. Talking about this, Cruz thinks that we should back Israel no matter what, because the Bible says so. And Tucker Carlson asked a lot of pointed questions about that. I'm going to try to get into that in the details here in just a minute. But since my expertise, if you will, has more to do with what the Bible actually says about these things, and particularly what Revelation has to say about these things, let me talk about that first. And let me just give a caveat. I'm not a geopolitical expert. So as I get into how we view Israel in the larger picture, it's not from a geopolitical aspect. It's not, are they a good ally or not? That's a geopolitical question. I'm just dealing with what does the Bible say? Because the Ted Cruz Tucker thing, they couldn't really get past, Tucker couldn't get past Ted Cruz saying, well, we just have to back him whatever because the Bible says so. Oh, wow, that's kind of a big one. So we're going to address that question. Now, once you address that question, and you'll soon find out that I don't think Ted Cruz was right, that doesn't mean we still don't back Israel. Now we get into just the normal discourse, which is geopolitics, what's going on, who's our ally, who's not, all that kind of thing. That's another question, and we can talk about that. Okay, this project on Revelation is a really different take. Most of Revelation, in my opinion, in terms of what we need to be discussing, is fulfilled in the first century, not in the by and by, not in the future. Jesus predicted that there would be wars and rumors of wars, and the sun will turn black and the moon will turn to blood, and he says the Jerusalem will be destroyed and the temple will be destroyed and not one stone will be left on another. He said all these things in Matthew 24 and several other biblical passages. And all that came to fruition in AD 70 when Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans and the temple was destroyed and no stone was left on another. And really cataclysmic stuff. So it makes sense that Revelation would be about all that, and I believe it is. I believe it's very interesting symbolic metaphors that talk about the gargantuan events that took place in the first century. AD 70 was one of the most significant events in all of history because the 4,000-year-old religious system of the world, everybody came to Jerusalem to, be involved in the temple and everything across the world. That was abolished and destroyed in AD 70. And then Rome, the greatest empire of all time, the generals who destroyed Jerusalem and the temple, Vespasian and Titus, they both went on to become emperors of Rome. And Vespasian started a new line of emperors. It was, we had 7 Caesars, and then we had the line of Vespasian. So the Roman Empire completely changed. The religious world completely changed. So all this cataclysmic stuff, I think the book of Revelation is talking about that as a primary fulfillment. Okay. Is it also talking about the future? Yes. How is it talking about the future? I have no idea. And most people don't. They think they do. But I think it's going to be a while myself. Maybe 50 years, maybe 100 years, maybe 1,000, maybe 10,000. The commentator that I'll share with you here in a second, he'll even mention 1,000,000 years. I don't know how long it's going to be. But I don't think we can do a very good job right now of taking what's in Revelation and applying it to future events. Prophecy in the scriptures is generally multiple fulfillment. There's usually a primary fulfillment and an ultimate fulfillment. As a great example, one we all know because we watched Peanuts and Linus, is the virgin shall be with child, and his name shall be called Emmanuel, right? The great Christmas prophecy in Isaiah. Well, we all know what the ultimate fulfillment to that was. Mary had a son named Jesus. She was a virgin. But what people don't know is that 2 years after Isaiah made that prophecy, his wife had a son. It says so a couple verses after the, let's call it the Linus verse. And in the Hebrew scriptures, in the Septuagint, the word for virgin can also be young woman. It doesn't have to be a technical virgin. But we do believe in the virgin birth, because in the Greek, when it says he was born of a virgin, that means virgin. That doesn't mean young woman. That means the real thing. So when I'm telling you here is not any kind of denial of the virgin birth. I believe in the virgin birth. But that prophecy had dual fulfillment. It had the near fulfillment. 2 years after he said it, his wife had a child. Talks about it right there in the same chapter of Isaiah. And then you had the ultimate fulfillment. So what I'm sharing with you about Revelation is that we have the near fulfillment, which is AD 70 and all that destruction. And then we have the ultimate fulfillment, which is coming at some point. We probably know about as much about it as people in Isaiah's time knew about Jesus, Mary, Nazareth, and the virgin birth. There's only a few places in the Bible that talk about the end times. People are crazy obsessed. Lots of Christians crazy obsessed about the end times, and there's words being thrown about now that I never thought I'd hear in mainstream discussion. Dispensationalism is like the theological category. But there's lots of people who are really into it, man. But there's like the book of Revelation, which doesn't talk about it much, and I'll explain that in a minute. You got Daniel chapter 7 talks about like some beast empires and a little horn coming out of one of the beast empires. You got the book of Zechariah, which has some interesting apocalyptic passages. You've got Matthew 24, a similar passage in Luke, and a similar passage in Matthew, Mark, Luke. Luke, Mark, Matthew, the synoptic gospels all have what they call an eschatological discourse. This is where Jesus says, no stone will be left on another, wars and rumors of wars, and you'll see the abomination of desolation and all these kind of weird things. There's 3 passages in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but there's not one in John. Oh, that's interesting. Well, to me, that's one of the convincing things, that the book of Revelation is really John's version of the eschatological discourse. He leaves it out of the book of John because he's got a whole nother book, Revelation, that talks about all that stuff. There's one chapter in 2 Thessalonians that's kind of cryptic and weird. I think he mentions the abomination of desolation. He talks about the man of sin. So other than those passages, there's not much of the Bible about all this stuff. But boy, it's plenty of fodder for a lot of crazy stuff. Okay. Let's talk about the book of Revelation. I might have to put on my glasses. Oh, we're good. Book of Revelation. Everybody likes to talk about the book of Revelation. Everybody is excited about the book of Revelation. But let me tell you, I don't think hardly anybody knows much at all about the book of Revelation. How do I know this? Just from total anecdotal talking to hundreds of people the last 5 years that I've worked on this project, and everybody gets excited, and then you ask them a question or two and nobody knows anything. They know that the Antichrist is going to come and take over the world. They know that you have to have the number 666 on your hand and on your forehead, or you won't be able to buy and sell. What else do they know? A millennium is mentioned, a couple of things like that. All right, let's talk about a couple of these things. Okay, let's talk about supposedly the Antichrist. This comes largely from Revelation chapter 13. It says that out of the water came the sea beast, and he had all these qualities of the 7 great empires. He had teeth that crushed you, and terrible, awful sea beast. And he's got 7 heads and 12 horns. Okay, what the heck is that? Well, if you read Revelation, a lot of people have read Revelation, but like me, their eyes glaze over and they're like, what the heck? And they kind of put it aside and they go to read something like John or Genesis or something a little more interesting, a little more navigable. But, all right, 7 heads, 10 horns, sea beast. What is that? By the way, the word Antichrist is never mentioned in the book of Revelation. You won't find the word. The only place you'll find the word in the Bible is in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John epistles, where he talks about the spirit of Antichrist and that there are many Antichrists that have come before and will come in the future. So this whole idea of this like one guy who's going to be the Antichrist, who's going to rule the world, is it going to happen? I don't know. I mean, I'm saying that it could happen. Is there a strong biblical case for it? No, not really. Antichrist doesn't appear in Revelation, but we got the sea beast. What is the sea beast? Well, I wish I had 8 hours, but I just got a little bit of time here. But it's the Roman Empire. Dominated everything, this giant sea beast. 7 heads and 12 horns. What's that? Well, there were 7 great empires in world history. I'll try to get them right. Babylonia, Persia, 4 different versions of the Greek Empire. You've got Alexander himself, and then you got the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, and then you've got Rome, which was early on was really a Greek empire, and then Rome kind of turned bad and became this evil empire. Count them up, you get 7 heads. 12 horns. On the 7th head was 12 horns. Anybody got an idea what those 12 horns might be? Caesars. You count from Julius Caesar to Vespasian, who destroyed Jerusalem, and there's 12 Caesars. So you got the 7th head, you got the 12 horns. I find it all very plausible. I forgot a footnote I got to mention here. So this commentary, I have prologues, prefaces, appendices, footnotes. I got my own translation of Revelation in here. I got a lot going on in here. But the actual commentary is not me. It's a scholar named James Jordan, who I consider to be a genius. He did 204 lectures on Revelation that I found to be brilliant. Then he had a stroke and he couldn't turn it into a book. And so I asked him for the legal permission to turn his commentary into a book series. So I'll say all that to say that the 12 horns, the 7 heads, all this kind of weird imagery that you find in Revelation, James Jordan, who is a genius when it comes to biblical imagery in the Old Testament, is able to piece it all together and make sense of it. It actually makes sense. Gosh, can you believe it? So that's the sea beast, Revelation 13. What else we got in Revelation? We got a land beast. Don't have time to get into it. The Herods and the high priests prop up. It's also called the false prophet. You probably heard that phrase from the dispensationalist thinkers. And the false prophet kind of elevates the sea beast. So Israel was elevating Rome back in the day in the 1st century. And Jordan thinks the land beast is Israel, and I do too. 666. Let's talk about that for a minute. What is 666? Well, you can find weird theories. Henry Kissinger was 666 for a while. He's dead. Daggone it, we got to find a new one. Various people get thrown around as adding up to 666. One of the most plausible that I came across for many years, I don't think it's the best one, but it's pretty close. And that is, if you take Hebrew letters or Greek letters or Latin letters, you know how like the X is also 10 and the V is also 5? Well, in Hebrew, it's the same way. And if you take Nero Caesar in the Hebrew, it adds up to 666. Well, Nero was the Caesar right before the destruction of Jerusalem. He was the one who slaughtered all kinds of Christians, a lot of Jews too. Well, almost. There's only 2 manuscripts where it adds up to 666. All the other manuscripts, it's Nero Caesar, not Neron Caesar, and it only adds up to 616. So almost. There's a lot of people who have the view that I have, which is called a preterist view, which is that generally we want to interpret Revelation in terms of near fulfillment in the 1st century. They really like that Nero Caesar thing, but it's not quite good enough because it's just only in a couple manuscripts. It's a bit of a stretch, but it's still pretty close and pretty cool. So what is 666? Well, according to Jordan in this commentary, I suggest you get it. There's only one other place in the Bible where the number 666 comes up. Is there anybody here sharp enough to be able to tell me where that is? Oh, come on. I thought we had Bible experts in here.
No.
1 Kings chapter 10, I think. Solomon is on his rise. He's doing all sorts of fantastic things. The Queen of Sheba comes all the way from Ethiopia and gives him all sorts of things, and he's obviously the light of the nations. The next thing that happens is it talks about all the gold that came into his kingdom. 666 talents. And from there, the rest of the story of Solomon's life is just one horrible, terrible decline until he gets into child sacrifice and homosexual brothels and all the horrible, evil things you could think of that lead to Solomon's horrible apostasy. So money, gold, 666. So in the commentary, Jordan would say that 666 doesn't really represent just being a terrible, evil person. I mean, it has something to do with that, but it has to do with being at the very heights of righteousness and enlightenment and falling all the way down. That's called apostasy. You can't be an apostate unless you were first a believer, non-apostate. So that's a little foretaste for you of 666. So that's just a little taste of what the Revelation commentary is about and how I really don't think it tells us, or we're able to get too much out of it right now in terms of what's going on in the world. And is Iran the one-horned goat? And should we back Israel no matter what they do, and all these sorts of things? I just don't think Revelation is there for us in that way, but I think it has a lot to offer us if you look at the near fulfillment. All right, let's look at Tucker and Ted Cruz. This is fascinating. Okay. Cruz. When I came into the Senate, I resolved that I was going to be the leading defender of Israel. The reason is twofold. Number one, as a Christian growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible that those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to run on the blessing side of things. Tucker, those who bless the government of Israel? Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government, it says the nation of Israel. So that's in the Bible. As a Christian, I believe that. Where is that? Tucker asked. Tucker was asking good questions. Ted didn't know. Tucker threw out what's in the book of Genesis. He didn't know it was Genesis chapter 12. They're both wrong on a lot of counts, but let's talk about it. Genesis 12, chapter 3. God says to Abraham, I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Okay, did anybody hear the word Israel when I read that verse? Not in there. Those who bless you, he's talking to Abraham. And guess what? In the Hebrew, you is singular. Now it does say at the end of the verse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. So that kind of sounds like maybe he's saying Abraham's descendants, and so now we've got a bless them, curse them thing. Could be. I don't think so. Galatians 3:16, New Testament, which interprets the Old Testament. Apostle Paul writes, the promises were spoken to Abraham and to his seed. Scripture does not say and to seeds, plural, meaning many people, but and to your seed, meaning one person who is Christ. Everything I just said there was Paul quoting, it wasn't me. So ultimately, the fulfillment of the promise to Abraham is in Jesus Christ, and it's through Jesus Christ that all the peoples of the world will be blessed. Well, we've certainly seen that happen, haven't we? Okay? Not all getting there. We're in the process. Okay. Then I'm going to run out of time, and I want to do questions because I got a feeling I'm going to get some. Then Ted Cruz gets into, well, Israel is God's chosen nation, and the Jews are God's chosen people. Cruz tried to bring Tucker into the, well, you don't like Jews thing, and Tucker got very offended by that, and he called Cruz a sleazy feline, and they went back and forth, but Tucker didn't really want to talk about the Jews. He just wanted to talk about Israel and the nation of Israel. But we're going to talk about the Jews, because you can't really get to the subject unless you do. And Ted said that the Jews are God's chosen people, and so Israel, we need to back whatever they do, because we don't want to be on the bad side of God's chosen people. Once again, Ted was wrong. Matthew 21, Jesus said, therefore I say unto you, the kingdom of God shall be taken from you, he's talking to the Jews, and be given to a nation bringing forth the fruits thereof. So the chosen people are having the kingdom of God taken from them, and it's going to be given to another nation. Well, what nation is that? Well, 1 Peter 2:9, Peter says to the believers, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. Colossians, therefore as God's chosen people, blah, 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 be holy. And another verse in Galatians 3, and if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. Okay. I think it's pretty clear. Now, let's just ask the question. If you still think that the Jews are God's chosen people, you still got a problem. Because do they deserve the land? Well, we've got many examples where the Jews didn't deserve the land because they weren't obedient. In order to get the land, you don't just have to be a Jew or be Abraham's descendant. In that paradigm, I don't believe that paradigm is the case anymore, but if you did believe that paradigm, then you have to be obedient. What are some examples? Well, right at the very beginning, it took them 40 years to get into the land. They had to roam around the wilderness because they were disobedient. Didn't get the land just because they were Jews. They had to be obedient. Then they went apostate. Yeah, I already told you all that stuff that Solomon did, and only went from bad to worse. So God came in and had Nebuchadnezzar destroy Jerusalem and the temple, turned it into rubble. Did they get to be in the land just because they were Jews? No, they had to be obedient. Didn't work out. Then Jesus comes, the ultimate fulfillment of all things, and he's rejected and crucified. And Jesus says, because of this, you're going to be destroyed. Jerusalem's going to be destroyed. The temple's going to be destroyed, and not one stone is going to be left on another. Did the Jews of that day get to stay in the land because they were Jews? No. They were horribly kicked out because they were disobedient. How about today's Jews? Let's start with the state of Israel. Well, according to a lot of polls, I could give you the documentation, but Tel Aviv is considered to be the most LGBT city on the planet. Well, that ain't very righteous in my eyes. Other people might think so. How about from a human rights? Forget about, that politically incorrect issue. How about just human rights? Just, wanting to be kind to all people. Well, we got what many people call a genocide going on in Gaza. That'll get you censored if you say it too loudly. But it became a real problem for the Jews when Haaretz, their news publication, came out and basically said the same thing. So from that perspective, today's Jews also fail the obedience test and do not deserve the land. My parents, I think I told you, went to Dallas Theological Seminary. Their best friends, Jim and Patty Hutchins, ended up becoming Messianic Jews, went to Israel. Joined a kibbutz, followed all the ceremonial laws, and they wanted to become Israeli citizens. And so their case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And I'm going to read to you what they said. But I didn't do a very good job with my homework here. You have to take it from my memory. This is what the Supreme Court said about their case. This is 1975. You can be an atheist and still be a Jew. You can be a Buddhist and still be a Jew. But if you believe in Jesus, you absolutely cannot be a Jew. And then one of the judges wrote to clarify, there's a sect that says that they believe in Jesus and are still Jews, but Israel vomits them out. So Israel's got a lot of challenges in terms of being on the right side of things right now. So you need some help with that. In order to have some time for questions, I'm going to have to close with, I think we need a better vision. I think the reason we've got this strange dispensational theology and people are so given to it, there's a lot of reasons. I think there's a lot of almost astrology-like need to kind of know the future, and so they like to get into all that kind of stuff, and that's a problem. I think there's also kind of a meditating on evil. You got the Antichrist, and he's going to take over the world, and there's going to be a blood moon, and it's going to be the apocalypse, and meditating on all that kind of stuff can kind of be fun, but we're supposed to be meditating on righteousness. Revelation 17, kind of the climax to the book. The angel takes John out into a wilderness and he shows him the great whore of Babylon. When I did the commentary, Microsoft Word came up and said, "Hey, you sure you want to use that word? That's kind of an offensive word." No, I want to use that word. Great whore of Babylon. On her forehead, mystery, Babylon the Great. She's sitting on that same sea beast with 7 heads and 12 horns. And she's got a cup filled with all sorts of filth. We won't get into all that, what that is. And she's drunk with the blood of the saints. Well, in the first century, just like they did with Jesus, it's the Jews dragging Christians over to get martyred, drunk with the blood of the saints. I believe the whore of Babylon in chapter 17 is representative of Israel in the first century. And it says when John saw the harlot, sometimes it uses the word harlot, he wondered with great wonder. It's like, wow. He was mesmerized, like, this is like the wildest thing, like this woman, and she's got all this filth, and she's got all this. So we can do that. We can meditate on unrighteousness, but that's the wrong vision. Of course, in Revelation, you have to get to 18 and 19. She's destroyed, basically destroyed by the Romans. And then the last 3 or 4 chapters of the book is a positive vision, which I think we need to shift to, which is the bride of Christ. The whore of Babylon is destroyed, and the bride of Christ arises. You know, you got 12 foundations with 12 different jewels, and you've got pristine glass and light and rainbows and spectrums, and it's an incredible vision, worthy. But what is that thing? Well, it's the fulfillment of the whole plan from the beginning, which it starts with Israel. I heard someone say the other day, Israel's not the boundary, it's the cradle. It starts with Israel, and it goes to the entire world. Jesus says, go ye into all the nations and make disciples of the nations. Well, we're in that process right now. We've got a ways to go, but we've made pretty good progress. The bride of Christ is all these nations coming into the kingdom. Revelation chapter, I'm going to say 20, I don't know. And the city has no need of sun or moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives its light, and its lamp is the Lamb. By its light will the nations walk, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it. There's a psalm that my church kind of sings back and forth on a pretty regular basis, which is, O Lord, save thy people and bless thine inheritance. What is the Lord's inheritance? Jesus' inheritance is the nations. That's the bride of Christ. Psalm 2:8, ask me, and I will make the nations your inheritance. That's the Father saying to the Son, ask me, I'm going to make the nations your inheritance. So the better positive vision is the Great Commission, going into all the world, making disciples of all nations, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. All the nations coming into the kingdom. That's worth meditating on. That's a positive vision. So I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you very much.